Chapter 1. The Capture. Space, for all its beauty and mystery, had a way of magnifying isolation. The endless expanse, filled with swirling galaxies, distant stars, and planets teeming with unknown life, seemed to stretch into infinity. Yet, it was within this vast void that Captain Nathaniel Cole and his crew found themselves stranded, floating in the eerie silence of the Andromeda sector. Their mission had been simple enough: investigate a series of strange reports from the outskirts of the galaxy, where an unknown alien race had been abducting human civilians. The first signs of a potential alien presence had come in the form of distress signals from lost outposts, fragmented transmissions speaking of people vanishing without a trace, leaving behind only a feeling of dread and foreboding. These messages had been disjointed, often broken and unclear, but one thing was certain: humans were being taken. Captain Cole, a man who had seen his fair share of intergalactic warfare and first contact situations, had taken command of this mission with a level of resolve that spoke to his years of experience. His face, weathered with age and battle scars, was the epitome of determination. He wasn't one to falter, not when lives were on the line. His ship, the Valor, a well-equipped battlecruiser, was now heading toward the coordinates of the last known location of the missing vessels, a barren moon that orbited a gas giant at the farthest reaches of the sector. The moon, with its jagged surface and harsh winds, had been the perfect place for an ambush, a hidden outpost that had escaped the notice of galactic authorities for years. It wasn't the first time a hostile alien force had set up shop in the most unlikely places, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. As the Valor descended toward the moon's surface, its engines humming with low-frequency vibrations, Captain Cole reviewed the mission briefing once more. His crew, a team of highly trained soldiers, had been prepared for any kind of enemy engagement. They had trained for every conceivable alien species, every scenario, every possibility. But nothing could have prepared them for what they were about to face. The transmissions they had intercepted hinted at something far more troubling than they could have anticipated. The alien race, which had initially seemed unremarkable, had a cruel streak that ran through their interactions with prisoners. The human civilians they had captured were said to be alive, but reports of their condition had been minimal. It was as if the aliens had grown bored with their captives, subjecting them to unknown and terrifying experiments. Some of the crew members had even whispered rumors about the aliens using their prisoners in ways that humans could scarcely imagine, leaving them to wonder whether their counterparts on the planet would even be alive by the time they arrived. Upon reaching the surface, the Valor hovered just above the moon's surface, sending down a small reconnaissance shuttle to investigate. The air was thick with tension as the team, led by Captain Cole, began their descent toward the alien structure. The moon's barren landscape stretched out before them, a gray, inhospitable wasteland filled with jagged rock formations, sharp ridges, and scattered dust clouds that whipped across the surface like tiny hurricanes. It was a desolate place, and as the shuttle's landing gear touched down, a heavy silence seemed to settle over the team, one that spoke of danger lurking just out of sight. The airlock hissed as the crew disembarked, their boots crunching on the frozen surface. The alien outpost, a dark and imposing structure, stood before them like a monolith. The architecture was unlike anything they had seen before: twisted spires and organic curves that seemed to bend in unnatural ways. It looked as though it had grown from the very rock of the moon itself, its dark surface pulsating with a strange energy. It was a ship, of sorts, but it seemed more like a living organism than a piece of technology. The walls were slick, covered in strange symbols and carvings that seemed to shift as the light played across them, creating an unsettling effect. Captain Cole motioned for his team to spread out, their weapons at the ready. The atmosphere was thick with unease. Every step felt heavier than the last as they moved deeper into the alien structure. The air was colder here, and it carried a faint metallic tang, like something foreign and ancient. The walls seemed to close in around them as they made their way through the narrow corridors, their footsteps echoing in the silence. They passed through what appeared to be large chambers, each one filled with strange, alien machinery that hummed with a quiet intensity. Some of the machines appeared to be collecting energy, while others seemed to be designed for purposes they couldn't even begin to fathom. It was clear that this place had been used for something far darker than simple exploration. Eventually, they came upon a large, circular room at the heart of the outpost, its walls lined with rows of glass chambers. Inside the chambers, human prisoners were suspended in some sort of stasis, their faces pale and lifeless. The sight of them sent a shiver down Captain Cole's spine. The prisoners were barely recognizable, their bodies twisted in unnatural positions, their limbs contorted in ways that suggested they had been subjected to painful experiments. Yet, despite the horror of their situation, none of them appeared to be dead. They were simply frozen, trapped in time. It was then that they heard a noise, faint at first, but growing louder. The sound of footsteps echoed through the chamber, and before Captain Cole could give the order to move, a figure appeared from the shadows. She was tall, with an angular, almost skeletal frame, her skin a dull shade of green that shimmered in the dim light. Her eyes, large and expressive, were filled with fear, and as she stepped forward, her gaze locked onto Captain Cole with a mixture of confusion and terror. The alien girl was unlike anything Captain Cole had ever seen. Her hair, a pale white mass of tendrils, hung loosely around her face, and her features were sharp, almost predatory. But what struck him the most was her eyes wide and unblinking, as though she had seen too much and was too afraid to look away from the nightmare she had found herself in. She was no soldier, no warrior. She was a prisoner, like the others. But unlike the humans, she had not yet been subjected to the cruel experiments that had left their marks on the bodies of the other captives. In that moment, a strange understanding passed between them. The alien girl opened her mouth to speak, but the words that came out were broken, garbled. Her language was foreign, filled with sharp, guttural tones. But there was no mistaking the terror in her voice. What are you doing to the prisoners, human?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Are you going to eat me? Are you going to kill us all?" Captain Cole's heart sank as he stepped forward, his voice calm and steady despite the tension that gripped him. "No," he said softly, his voice cutting through the thick silence of the room. "We're here to rescue you." But the alien girl only stared at him in disbelief. She didn't understand. To her, the humans were just another enemy, another set of predators to be feared. To her, humanity was a threat, something that consumed, destroyed, and killed. She had never seen the compassion that the human race was capable of. She had only seen the cruelty of her captors, and the fear of the unknown had clouded her judgment. As the alien girl backed away, her eyes filled with fear, Captain Cole understood something crucial. The battle ahead would not be just about saving the prisoners or defeating the alien forces. It would also be about earning the trust of those who had been captured, those who had suffered under the hands of their captors. And for the alien girl, who had once believed that humans were nothing more than monsters, that trust would be the hardest thing to win. The silence stretched on as Captain Cole stood still, trying to gauge the alien girl's next move. The tension in the room was palpable. Her large, black eyes never left his, brimming with suspicion and raw fear. She trembled ever so slightly, her thin body stiff and rigid as though she was preparing to either fight or flee. Her gaze darted toward the prisoners in the stasis chambers, then back to him, as if trying to make sense of what was happening. The question she had asked hung in the air, unanswered and still full of terror. "Are you going to eat me? Are you going to kill us all?" Her voice had cracked, betraying the anxiety that coursed through her. Cole's mind raced. How could she think they were here to harm her? They were here for one purpose only: rescue. Yet, standing before her now, he understood the deep-seated fear that had shaped her perception of humanity. In her world, humans may have been synonymous with something far darker, something that consumed what it did not understand. She had never encountered humans as allies, only as monsters to be feared. This was no simple misunderstanding, it was the result of years of cruelty and alien encounters gone wrong. He took a cautious step forward, raising his hand in a gesture of peace. His soldiers flanked him, their weapons lowered but ready, their eyes scanning the room for any sign of a threat. But Captain Cole's focus remained solely on the alien girl. "No, we're not here to hurt you," he said, his voice softer now, trying to convey the sincerity of his words. "We're here to free you. We're here to take you back to safety." The alien girl's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Captain Cole feared that she might run, that the terror in her eyes would make her flee into the darkness of the chamber. But she remained rooted to the spot, her body trembling ever so slightly, as if she was caught between the instinct to survive and the instinct to fight. She didn't believe him. She couldn't. To her, all humans were predators, and the idea that they would rescue her was something so foreign, so far beyond her understanding, that it almost seemed laughable. Her people had always seen humans as a threat, an invasive species, a plague that needed to be eradicated. The alien girl took a step back, her sharp eyes flicking over Cole's uniform, then to the soldiers behind him. She could see the humans weren't armed in the way her captors had been. Their weapons were sleek, efficient, but not meant for slaughter. They were meant for defense. But that didn't ease her fear. She had been through too much already, seen too much cruelty to trust the humans standing before her. She opened her mouth again, her voice small but filled with defiance. "You're lying. You're all the same. You just want to consume us, to use us for your experiments." Captain Cole's expression hardened. He could see that she had no idea what he was saying, that his words meant nothing to her. She had no concept of human compassion, no understanding of their capacity for empathy. She only knew the dark side of the galaxy, the part where survival meant domination, where strength equaled cruelty, and where the weak were devoured by the strong. He looked back at his team, who remained silent, waiting for a signal. But Cole knew this wasn't about the soldiers or the weapons. They weren't going to get anywhere with force. He needed to break through the girl's fear, to show her that not all humans were the same, that there was more to humanity than the monsters she had been taught to see. But how could he do that when everything about her was a reaction to fear? Everything about her was defense, not trust. "Listen to me," he said, trying once more, his voice gentle but firm. "We don't want to harm you. We are not like the ones who took you. We're here to take you home. Your people will want to see you again. We're here to save you from the ones who hurt you." The alien girl flinched at the mention of her captors. Her gaze flickered to the stasis chambers once more, to the suffering of her fellow prisoners. In that moment, something changed in her eyes. It was a fleeting moment, but it was enough. Captain Cole saw it, a crack in her hardened exterior. It was as though a part of her wanted to believe him, but the other part held on to the only truth she had known for so long, that humans were dangerous. Before he could speak again, the girl's voice cut through the stillness. "What will happen to us? Will you keep us in cages like they did? Will you lock us away like animals?" The question was raw, and it hit Cole harder than he expected. She wasn't asking for a savior. She was asking for a chance to believe that not all captives were destined for a life of imprisonment. That maybe, just maybe, there was a human out there who wasn't going to enslave her or make her a tool for experimentation. "No," Cole said firmly, his voice steady. "You'll never be caged again. Not by us." The alien girl seemed to take in his words, her trembling body slowly relaxing, though the wariness in her eyes never completely faded. She was still afraid, but now, perhaps for the first time, she saw something in the humans standing before her that resembled hope. And then, for the first time, the alien girl nodded, her expression softening slightly, though the skepticism remained. Chapter 2: The Path to Trust. As the crew of the Valor began to make preparations to evacuate the prisoners, Captain Cole felt the weight of the mission's true complexity settling upon him. They had expected to face alien forces, perhaps some form of resistance or a hidden enemy, but they hadn't anticipated this. This wasn't just a rescue mission. It was a mission to rebuild trust, to tear down walls that had been built by centuries of fear and misunderstanding. Captain Cole stood in the control room of the Valor, looking out through the large viewing window at the barren moon below. The stasis chambers were already being loaded into the transport vessel, and his soldiers had secured the area. But Cole knew that their work was far from over. They had saved the prisoners, yes, but how would they reintegrate them into a world they had never known? And how would the alien girl who had been the first to speak out, the first to question their intentions, view the humans who had come to her rescue? The girl's name, as it turned out, was Thera. She was from a distant world, a place where humans were not welcome. It was a harsh world, ruled by a military dictatorship that had always seen humanity as a threat to their dominance in the galaxy. For Thera and her people, the arrival of humans had always meant subjugation, imprisonment, and worse. Thera had been part of a covert mission to gather intelligence on humanity's latest advancements when she and her comrades were ambushed and captured. Her life had been one of constant escape and evasion until the day she found herself trapped on that desolate moon. But now, as Thra stood aboard the Valor, surrounded by unfamiliar faces, she found herself once again faced with the choice of survival. Could she trust these humans who claimed to want to help? Or would their betrayal come when she least expected it? Captain Cole turned from the window as his second-in-command, Lieutenant Raylan, approached with a report. "Captain, we've completed the final checks on the prisoners. They're being loaded onto the transport shuttle now. Thra's ready for debriefing." Cole nodded. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Prepare the transport. We leave in 10 minutes. As Lieutenant Raylan departed, Captain Cole's mind wandered back to Thra. He had hoped that by rescuing her, he could show her that not all humans were the same. But the path to rebuilding trust wouldn't be easy. He knew the scars of her past would take time to heal, and perhaps, just perhaps, the seeds of hope he had planted would one day grow into something stronger than fear. It was a small step, one that could change the course of their relationship with the alien races of this sector. But in the vast expanse of space, every journey began with just a single step. The transport shuttle hummed as it glided across the desolate surface of the moon, its sleek body cutting through the dust and debris with minimal effort. Inside, the atmosphere was tense, as if everyone could feel the weight of the mission that had brought them here. The rescue of the prisoners had gone smoothly, too smoothly, in fact, for Captain Cole's liking. There were still many unknowns, and the encounter with Thra had only raised more questions than answers. As they made their way back to the ship, Captain Cole took a seat in the transport's small command center, staring at the small holographic map that showed their location relative to the Valor. The ship was already prepared for departure, and his crew was set to move out as soon as the prisoners were safely aboard. Thra, seated across from him, appeared distant. Her eyes were fixed on the floor, her mind no doubt grappling with the overwhelming change in her life. The initial conversation between them had been filled with fear and distrust, but now, as they sat together in the confines of the shuttle, something had shifted. She was no longer on edge, but her wariness was still present, etched into the lines of her face, visible in the way she clenched her fists whenever someone moved too close. She had yet to speak since their departure from the alien outpost. Captain Cole leaned back in his chair, watching her carefully. He knew that trust couldn't be forced. It had to be earned, slowly and consistently. Perhaps it wasn't his place to bridge the gap between their two species. It wasn't like he could undo the years of pain, fear, and captivity she had experienced at the hands of her own people. But he could offer her something. Not just the physical safety of the Valor, but a chance to experience a different reality, a reality where humans weren't monsters, where compassion could exist between species. "You don't have to be afraid," he said quietly, breaking the silence. His voice was calm, but beneath the surface, he could hear the hesitation in his own words. He wasn't sure how much of his message was sinking in, but he knew that he had to keep trying. "We're not here to cage you. We're not here to harm you. You're free now, Thra. You don't have to hide anymore." Thra's eyes snapped to his, her gaze sharp and calculating. Her expression was a mixture of disbelief and guarded curiosity. She opened her mouth to respond, but the words seemed to falter on her tongue. Instead, she looked away again, staring out of the transport's small viewport into the vastness of space. "I don't know if I can believe that," she murmured, her voice almost a whisper. "You say you're here to save us, but how do I know you're any different from the others? How do I know you won't just use us for your own gain, like they did?" The question was raw, unfiltered, and it hit Captain Cole with a force he hadn't expected. He'd known she'd be skeptical, but hearing her voice tremble with the weight of that doubt made his stomach tighten. He was used to navigating enemy lines, fighting for survival, and strategizing against hostile forces. But this was different. He wasn't dealing with an enemy. He was dealing with a person who had lived through unimaginable horrors. A person who had been conditioned to see humans as nothing more than predators. How could he make her understand? "I understand your fear," Captain Cole said, his voice softer now. "I know what it's like to be betrayed, to be made to feel like you don't have a choice in what happens to you. But I'm asking you to trust me. Trust us, not because we're perfect, but because we genuinely want to help." Thra didn't respond. Instead, she turned her head slightly, eyes narrowing as if weighing his words. It was clear that her experience had left her skeptical, perhaps deeply so. She had likely been told countless lies in the past, made promises of safety, only to find that betrayal lurked around every corner. Trust, for her, was a commodity that had long since lost its value. Captain Cole sighed quietly, leaning forward. I know this might not be enough. It probably won't be. But I'm not asking for your trust all at once. I'm asking for a chance, just a chance to prove that we can be something different. The shuttle continued its flight back to the Valor, its engines a steady hum in the background, but Captain Cole's thoughts were elsewhere. How many times had he seen species interact with one another out of fear, out of the desire to control or dominate? How many times had the universe watched civilizations fall, simply because neither side could see beyond the surface of their own distrust? He wasn't sure how long it would take, but he would be there to see it through. He would help her learn that not all humans were the same. Chapter 3, A New Beginning. By the time the transport shuttle docked with the Valor, the atmosphere had shifted slightly. Thera, though still cautious, had begun to open up, if only just a little. She had yet to fully trust Captain Cole and his crew, but she had stopped flinching at every movement, stopped glaring at every human who came into her line of sight. It was a small victory, but to Cole, it was one step forward. As the hatch of the shuttle opened, the crew stood ready to assist the prisoners, guiding them carefully into the ship's medical bay. Thera followed closely behind, her gaze darting from side to side as she took in the interior of the Valor, a far cry from the grim and organic alien outpost she had come from. The walls of the ship were clean and metallic, adorned with sleek, functional technology. The humans aboard moved with purpose, their actions efficient yet not cold, not robotic. There was something different about them, something that hadn't yet been fully explained to Thera. She had known war her entire life, knew how to read an enemy's actions. But the humans before her were a puzzle, and she had only begun to see the pieces. Captain Cole led her through the corridors, his footsteps light as he moved ahead, offering her the space to process her surroundings. She was silent, but her eyes flicked over the crew, taking in everything. He knew she was watching for signs of deception, waiting for something to prove her initial assumptions correct. It was only natural. She had been shaped by an environment where survival depended on not trusting anyone, not letting your guard down. Eventually, they arrived at a small, private room within the medical bay. Inside, a medical officer, Dr. Greer, stood ready to examine the prisoners. She had been briefed on the situation and was prepared for the delicate task of helping the alien captives adjust to their new environment. Thera, Captain Cole said, turning to her as they entered the room. You're safe now. Dr. Greer will take care of you. I'll be right outside if you need anything. The alien girl glanced up at him, her expression unreadable, before she gave a single, short nod. It was the first sign of compliance, of trust, that Cole had seen in her since the moment they had met. As he stepped out of the room, Captain Cole allowed himself a moment of reflection. The first few steps had been made. Now came the hardest part, earning her trust. But this was only the beginning of something much larger. Their mission was not only about saving lives. It was about breaking down the walls that fear and history had built. And if he succeeded, if he could show Thera and the others that humans were capable of compassion and understanding, the galaxy might just have a chance at peace. Captain Cole paced slowly outside the medical room, his boots clicking on the pristine floor of the Valor. The steady hum of the ship's systems was a constant backdrop, the pulse of the engines and the quiet chatter of the crew filling the otherwise empty space. He glanced at his wrist, calm, checking the time. Hours had passed since Thera had entered the medical bay, and though he had hoped for a quick recovery, he knew the alien girl needed more than just medical attention. She needed time to process everything that had happened, time to adjust to her new reality. Thera's quiet acceptance of Dr. Greer's care had been a small breakthrough. After everything she had been through, it was no small feat yet. As Cole stood there, his mind kept returning to the question that haunted him. How long would it take for her to truly trust them? For her to stop seeing them as potential threats, predators even, and start seeing them as allies? He was snapped from his thoughts by the sudden ping of his wrist comm, a message from Lieutenant Raylan. It was brief, yet significant. Captain, Thera is asking for you. She wants to speak. A surge of cautious optimism ran through Cole's chest. He straightened, adjusting his uniform and preparing himself for whatever conversation lay ahead. He knew it wouldn't be easy, and he didn't expect miracles, but every small step with Thera counted. As he entered the medical room, he saw Thera sitting on the examination table. Her posture was less tense than before, but her expression remained neutral. She was staring at her hands, the long fingers of her alien species twitching slightly. Dr. Greer stood by, giving Captain Cole a knowing glance before stepping out, leaving the two of them alone. "Thra," Captain Cole said, his voice calm yet soft. "You wanted to speak with me?" The alien girl slowly looked up, her dark eyes narrowing slightly as they met his. For a moment, there was a lingering silence, one that stretched between them like an invisible barrier. Then, to his surprise, she spoke, her voice still tentative, but no longer full of the same fear that had clouded her words earlier. "You were right," she said quietly, "about not being caged. But it's hard to believe. After everything I've seen, everything I've been through." She hesitated, looking down again at her hands. "I don't know if I can trust you, or anyone, really." Cole nodded slowly, understanding all too well the weight of her words. "I get it. I truly do," he said, stepping forward, keeping his voice steady. "You've been through more than most of us could imagine. And you've had your trust broken more times than you should ever have to endure. But that doesn't mean we're all the same. We're here because we want to help, Thra. No strings attached. Just a chance to start over." Her eyes flicked back to him, studying him intently. For a long while, there was only the sound of the ship's engines thrumming beneath them. It was as if she was weighing the truth of his words, trying to discern if there was any deception hidden in the quiet sincerity of his tone. She had grown up in a galaxy where alliances were forged with manipulation, where survival meant betrayal. Trust didn't come easily for her, and perhaps it never would. But then, just as he was beginning to think that the walls might never come down, Thra spoke again. Maybe I don't have to trust you fully. Not yet. But I can try. And that's more than I've ever had before." Captain Cole's heart tightened with a mixture of relief and hope. It wasn't much, but it was enough. In a world filled with chaos and destruction, a single step toward mutual understanding was a victory. They weren't enemies anymore. They weren't monsters, either. They were two beings from two different worlds, both trying to survive in an unforgiving galaxy. "Thank you," Cole said quietly, nodding to her. "That's all I ask." Chapter 4. The Future Awaits. Weeks passed aboard the Valor as they journeyed back toward the heart of human space, with Thra's recovery proceeding far better than expected. She had started to open up to the crew, speaking more with the medical staff, and even joining some of the more casual conversations in the mess hall. Though she still remained cautious, she had begun to understand that the humans who had rescued her were not the same as the captors who had held her in stasis. Her trust was still fragile, like a delicate thread holding together the pieces of her broken world. But it was there, and it was growing stronger with every passing day. Captain Cole continued to check in with her regularly, though he never pushed her too hard. His conversations were always gentle, filled with understanding. Slowly, Thra began to ask questions not about the mission or the ship, but about humanity itself. She wanted to know why humans acted the way they did, why they sought peace and not just conquest. She had been conditioned her whole life to see humans as a force to be fought, never as equals. And yet, now she was beginning to see them in a new light. One evening, as they approached the outer edges of human territory, Captain Cole sat across from Thra in the ship's observation deck. The stars outside sparkled like distant jewels, scattered across the black expanse of space. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Thra said softly, her voice filled with awe as she gazed out the window. "I never thought I'd see something like this again. It feels surreal." Cole nodded, his gaze following hers. "I've seen a lot in my time, but space always feels the same to me, endless, mysterious. There's always something new to discover. Even for someone like me, it never gets old." Thra turned to him, her eyes no longer filled with suspicion, but curiosity. "Do you ever wonder what it would be like to live somewhere peaceful, where we didn't have to fight to survive?" Captain Cole considered her question for a moment. "Every day," he said, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "But peace is something you have to build. It doesn't just happen on its own. People have to work for it. Every action, every decision, they all count." Thra's eyes darkened as she thought about her own people, the countless wars they had fought, and the devastation they had left in their wake. She looked down at her hands again, as if reflecting on the past, before lifting her gaze to meet his once more. Maybe humans can show us how to build that peace." Captain Cole's heart swelled at her words. There was still so much to be done, so many bridges left to build. But at that moment, it felt as if a new future was beginning to unfold, one where humans and aliens could work together, where trust and understanding could take root, even in the most unlikely places. As the Valor continued its journey through the stars, Captain Cole knew that this was just the beginning of something much larger. It wasn't just a mission to rescue prisoners or thwart an alien enemy. It was a mission to change the course of history. A mission to prove that, even in the darkest corners of the galaxy, there was always hope for a new beginning. And as the distant stars shimmered beyond the ship's windows, Captain Cole couldn't help but believe that perhaps, for the first time, the galaxy was ready to change.